Why are you still waiting? Seriously, why are you sitting in that open plan office, billing 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and still checking your bank account like it owes you an apology? You have a professional license, you have a laptop, and right now, in 2026, that combination is worth more than most people in your city can even comprehend, if you know how to deploy it correctly. Here's what nobody in your architecture school told you. The traditional career ladder wasn't built to make you wealthy. It was built to keep you productive for someone else's wealth. And the firms at the top know this. They always have. But what happens when you take your license, your design intelligence, your hard-won technical skills, and you stop anchoring them to one city, one office, one currency? What happens is this. You 5x your savings rate almost overnight. Not because you worked harder, because you restructured the equation entirely. That is what we are going to rebuild today. Not your resume, not your portfolio, your entire career architecture around a global strategy designed to give you the one thing that most professionals in your tax bracket will never have: structural freedom. We don't follow the market, we design the moat. In a world of followers, we are the architects of our own freedom. Welcome to Wealth Forge. I'm Dr. Ben, and this is where we stop following the blueprint everyone handed us and start drawing our own. The fallacy of the local hustle. Let me give you a number that should make you deeply uncomfortable. In 2026, the median rent for a one-bedroom apartment in a major design hub, New York, London, Sydney, Singapore, sits somewhere between $3,200 and $4,800 a month after tax. Now tell me, what does a junior architect in those same cities earn? Maybe $55,000 to $75,000 a year before tax. Run that math. I'll wait. You are, in the most technical sense of the word, working to pay rent. Everything else, savings, investment, freedom of choice, the ability to say no to a bad project, that is collateral damage to the cost of your postcode. This is what I call the income ceiling versus cost of living trap, and it is not a personal failing. It is a structural design flaw in the traditional career model that was never meant to solve for your wealth. It was designed to solve for your availability. Think about it this way. The city charges you for proximity. Proximity to opportunity, yes, but also proximity to every other professional competing for the same projects, the same clients, the same promotions. The system feeds on that competition. Your anxiety is its fuel. And here's where most young professionals make the fatal mistake. They work harder inside the trap, hoping intensity will break the ceiling. It won't. You don't break a structural trap with more effort. You break it with a different structure. That different structure has a name. We call it the moat. The moat is not a savings account. It is not a side hustle. The moat is the deliberate architectural decision to decouple your earning power from your physical location so that where you live no longer determines how far you can go. The invisible cage, while your mind defends the trap. But before we go any further, before I show you the blueprint, before we talk numbers and cities and visa programs, I need to address something that no financial channel will touch. Because here's the real reason most professionals never make the leap. It's not logistics. It's not their visa status. It's not even money. It's the story they've been telling themselves so long, they've stopped noticing it's a story. Let me explain what I mean. There's a well-documented phenomenon in human decision-making called loss aversion. The research is unambiguous. The pain of losing something we already have is psychologically twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining something new, even if the new thing is objectively better. So when you sit down and think seriously about leaving your city, leaving your firm, leaving the salary that hits your account every 2 weeks, your brain does not perform a rational cost-benefit analysis. It performs a threat response. Your mind says, but what if the clients don't come? What if the visa falls through? What if I lose the seniority I've built? And here's the cruel irony. The very things your brain is protecting are the things that are keeping you financially trapped. Your seniority in a firm that will not make you wealthy, your familiarity with a city that is consuming majority of your income, your stability in a situation that is structurally unstable for your long-term financial life. Familiarity is not the same as safety. This is one of the most dangerous confusions a professional can make. There's a second layer to this, and it's more uncomfortable. Your identity. Right now, consciously or not, you may identify as a local professional, someone embedded in a specific city's design scene, someone whose credibility comes from being in the room, being at the networking events, being known in a particular postal code. That identity is not wrong, but it is a cage with very comfortable furniture. Because the moment you accept that identity as fixed, as the thing you are, rather than the thing you currently do, you have outsourced the ceiling of your ambition to your geography. And the geography does not care about your ambition. Now here is the thing I want you to notice, and I mean really notice, not just nod along to. The professionals who successfully execute what I'm about to show you don't do it because they had more certainty than you. They did it because they made a decision before they had certainty. They chose the identity of the architect first. The evidence came second. That is not recklessness. That is the precise cognitive move that separates people who redesign their financial life from people who spend their career planning to. Think about the peer group you're in right now. Count how many of them are genuinely building structural wealth, not lifestyle, not the appearance of success, but actual compounding assets that work independent of their labor. If that number is low, it is not because your peer group lacks intelligence or ambition. It is because we calibrate our definition of possible to the range of outcomes we see around us. When everyone you know is trapped in the same ceiling, the ceiling starts to look like the sky. It isn't. And the moment you understand that, viscerally, not just intellectually, the blueprint I'm about to give you stops being interesting and starts being urgent. So let's go build it. The architecture of geographic arbitrage. Let me introduce you to a concept that the wealthiest location-independent professionals have quietly been using for over a decade, and that in 2026 has become more accessible, more powerful, and more strategically significant than at any point in history. Geographic arbitrage. In its simplest form, you earn in a strong, stable currency, US dollars, euros, British pounds, while you live in an economy where your purchasing power multiplies. But I want you to understand this at a deeper level than just work remote and live cheap. That's the tourist version of this idea. We're building the architect's version.
The architect's version looks like this. You identify what I call boom zones. Cities and regions in 2026 where infrastructure is actively modernizing, where a young professional class is rising, where culture, food, and quality of life are genuinely excellent, but where the structural cost of living hasn't yet caught up to the global demand. Right now, those boom zones include places like Medellin in Colombia, Tbilisi in Georgia, Chiang Mai in Thailand, Plovdiv in Bulgaria, and for those who want a more urban energy, Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam, and Plovdiv's neighbor, Sofia. In these cities, a fully furnished apartment in a vibrant neighborhood costs between $400 and $900 a month. A high-quality meal, the kind you'd pay $40 for in Manhattan, runs you $6. Co-working spaces with fiber internet, between $80 and $150 a month, full amenities. Now here's where the arithmetic becomes almost violent in its clarity. If you were billing $6,000 a month as a remote design consultant and your all-in living costs are $1,500, you have just created a $4,500 monthly surplus. In a comparable life lived in Sydney or London, that same $6,000 in billings might leave you with $400 after rent, food, transport, and tax, maybe $600 if you're disciplined. This is not a small difference. This is the difference between a career and a wealth-building machine. And that surplus, that's your moat. That's the capital that starts working for you, compounding, building the structural layer that means you are never at the mercy of a single client, a single firm, or a single economy again. Building your remote design infrastructure. Now, let's get into specifics, because the philosophy without the infrastructure is just motivation content, and we don't do motivation content here. We do blueprints. First, your connectivity stack. In 2026, the argument that you can't work remotely as an architect because of file sizes and BIM collaboration is simply outdated. Cloud-based BIM platforms, Revit Cloud Work Sharing, Hypar, Speckle for open-source workflows have eliminated that barrier. Back up your primary internet connection. In most boom zone cities, fiber is available, but carry a secondary SIM from a local carrier and a portable satellite backup for anywhere fiber isn't consistent. This is a $40 a month insurance policy on your entire income. Second, your legal and tax structure. This is where most nomadic professionals leave serious money on the table, or worse, create serious legal exposure. In 2026, over 55 countries now offer formal digital nomad visa programs. These are not tourist visas. These are structured residency pathways with specific provisions for remote workers, many of which come with defined tax treatment. Georgia's small business flat tax, 1% of revenue. Portugal's non-habitual residence regime, 20% flat on professional income. Estonia's e-residency program allows you to operate an EU-registered company without living there. You need a tax-competent accountant who specifically works with location-independent professionals. This is non-negotiable. A good one will save you multiples of their fee each year. Third, your client architecture. You are no longer a local employee. You are a global consultant. That identity shift changes everything: how you price, how you scope, and critically, how you position yourself. Your clients should be diversified across at minimum 2 currency zones, one US-based retainer, one European or GCC-based project, and ideally one fast growth market client where your design intelligence is perceived as premium. Never let a single client represent more than 40% of your monthly billing. That is not a guideline. That is the structural boundary between a consultant and a dependent. Leveraging the surplus for rapid compounding. You've built the structure. You're earning in dollars. Your costs are low. Your surplus is consistent and significant. Now what? This is the question that separates the travelers from the architects. Most nomads get to this point and do one of 2 things. They either upgrade their lifestyle, nicer apartments, more travel, more experiences, or they leave the surplus sitting in a high-yield savings account, feeling quietly proud of themselves. Neither of those is wrong, but neither of those is building the moat. Building the moat means putting that surplus to work in assets that generate returns independent of your active labor. What does that look like concretely in 2026? Option 1, index-based wealth accumulation, the boring, powerful backbone. A consistent monthly allocation into globally diversified index funds. Because you are living on 25 to 30% of your income, you can invest at a rate that most of your local market peers simply cannot access without sacrificing their quality of life. Option 2, property acquisition in the boom zone itself. This is the move that most people overlook. You are living in a city that is in the early stages of a growth curve. You're watching the neighborhood change. You have local knowledge that no remote investor has. In several of these markets, Medellin, Tbilisi, select areas of Vietnam, foreigners can own property through structures that a local attorney can establish for you cleanly. Buying early in a boom zone is the geographic version of buying equity before the valuation inflects. Option 3, your own design venture. With financial runway, real runway, not 3 months of emergency fund runway, but 12 to 18 months of zero-stress living expenses in reserve, you can take the professional risks that your city-trapped peers cannot afford. You can pitch that adaptive reuse project you've been thinking about. You can develop that parametric design tool. You can start the product studio. You can write the book. The psychological freedom that comes from having a real surplus is not just a lifestyle upgrade, it is a strategic asset. It changes the quality of your decisions. It changes the projects you say yes to and the ones you walk away from. Your peers who are paying $3,000 a month in rent are not in a position to take those risks. You are. Scaling the moat into long-term sovereignty. Let's zoom out one final time, because I want you to see not just where this starts, but where it goes. Phase 1 is the solo nomad. You've decoupled your location from your income. You're building surplus. You're investing. You have clarity. Phase 2 is the distributed practice. You stop being the only one doing the work. You begin building a team, designers, project managers, technical architects, drawn from global talent markets. A structural engineer in Eastern Europe at a fraction of Western rates, but with equivalent training. A visualization specialist in Southeast Asia whose renders compete with the best studios in the world. A BIM coordinator in Latin America, managing model discipline across time zones while you sleep. You are no longer trading time for money. You are building a firm, one that operates as a distributed intelligence rather than a physical office. Phase 3 is ownership. You are no longer living in the boom zones. You own pieces of them. Property, equity stakes in local ventures, participation in the infrastructure growth cycle you identified early.
And at that point, something has fundamentally shifted. You are not a professional who achieved financial independence. You are an architect, in every sense of that word, of a sovereign financial life. One that is not dependent on a single employer, a single city, a single market cycle, or a single currency. You designed this outcome. You did not stumble into it. You drew the blueprint, you built the structure, and you compounded your way to a position that most professionals will spend their entire career being told is reserved for someone else. It is not reserved for someone else. Here's what I want you to do right now. Not next week, not after the next project deadline. Right now. Open a document. Write down 3 things. The country you would move to tomorrow if you had no logistical barriers, the client you could pitch for remote work within the next 30 days, and the one asset you would buy with your first 6 months of surplus. That document is the beginning of your blueprint, and the blueprint is the beginning of everything. If this reframed the way you see your career and your financial future, this channel has an entire architecture of thinking built for people who are done following someone else's structural plan. Subscribe to Wealth Forge. Leave a comment below with your boom zone, the city you'd go to first. I read every one. And I'll see you in the next blueprint.